So previously we discussed interaction and types of interaction. They are positive interaction and a negative interaction. So in last week we discussed about the positive interaction, and let us continue negative interaction. Right? Negative interaction, there are different steps are there. One is a predation, second one is a parasitism, and third category is competition. I'm talking about Yes, students, competition is broadly divided into two types. They are intraspecific and the intraspecific. What is intraspecific competition? Intraspecific competition, it is an interaction that occurs with the species which are belonging to the same group. That is called the intraspecific. Whereas interspecific competition means a competition that occurs in between two different species, right? Okay. So next we pass on to amensalism, one of the interaction I'm talking about. During this competition, both of them are, the organism are involved in competition. Both of them are not benefited, both of them are harmed, right? Simply I can say there is no benefit. Those organisms which are involved in intraspecific and the interspecific competition, in which both of them are not benefited, but both of them are harmed, right? So that is the reason for a competition, right? Next we pass on to amensalism. Now, amensalism, in which there are two different, it is a kind of negative interaction. First of all, try to understand what is amensalism. Amensalism, it is a kind of negative interaction, right? In which if there are two organisms are involved, right? Organism number one, if bacteria, I like to talk about some bacteria or some fungus, right? Some fungus, right? And some bacteria. The fungi and bacteria which are involved in negative interaction, what will happen is these two organisms, any one organism produces a kind of substances that is called allelobiosis. Simply I can say it is also known as allelopathic. Allelopathic, it is also known as antibiosis. It is also called as antibiosis. Actually, what is it? Antibiosis. Antibiosis is a process in which there is a substance secreted by one organism which is going to destroy or incubate the growth of another organism. That is called allelopathy or antibiosis. Allelopathy or antibiosis. Simply I can say allelopathic or antibiosis. Simply I can say amensalism is nothing but it is an interaction in which there are two organisms involved. One is totally incubated and the another one is not benefited, not harmed. So that is called amensalism. I repeat once again, amensalism is nothing but. What is amensalism? Amensalism, it is an interaction amensalism, it is an interaction, right? Okay. And one is, right? Say for example, Penicillium notatum. Penicillium notatum. It is a fungus. Penicillium notatum. It is a fungi that produces a substances that is called penicillin. The substance which inhibits the growth of other organism. Such a substance is known as antibiosis. Or it is an antibiotic, no very well, right? This Penicillium notatum produces an antibiotic, namely penicillin. Now this penicillin, which is going to destroy the growth of other living microorganisms, right? Right, I can say. Now, this penicillin, it's an antibiotic that inhibits the growth of other living organisms, particularly I can say some bacteria. Some bacteria, the growth is totally inhibited by the entry of such an antibiotic, that is a penicillin, right? So this kind of interaction is known as amensalism. Amensalism, it is an interaction in which there are two living organisms are involved. One is a penicillin notatum, is a fungi, and another is a bacteria, particularly I can point out Staphylococcus. It is one of the coccus bacteria, and this growth of these Staphylococcus bacteria, which is going to be inhibited by the entry of penicillin. So this is a penicillin which is going to inhibit. It inhibits the growth of Staphylococcus member. So that is called the amensalism. Okay, in which one people are not able to hear their voice. So in which there are two living organisms involved. Students, am I audible? Yes, students?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
So as I said, amensalism, it is an interaction in which one is totally harmed and another one is not benefited, right? So for example, penicillin notatum is given and the bacteria, Staphylococcus members are given, and the growth of Staphylococcus member is totally inhibited by the secretion of the substances obtained from penicillin notatum. So that is called the amensalism, right? One more example I am going to give you. Trichoderma. One more example I am going to point out. Trichoderma. Actually, this trichoderma, it also inhibits some living microorganism, right? Trichoderma. It also inhibits some fungus. Some fungus, right? So, for example, Aspergillus member. So, in which trichoderma is not benefited and neither benefited nor harmed, whereas this Aspergillus, its growth is totally inhibited by the entry of this trichoderma, right? So, this is one of the example for amensalism, right? Right. So, students, next we pass on to interspecific interaction, right? Or it is also known as Co-evolutionary dynamics. It is nothing but it is a intraspecific interaction, right? Co-evolutionary dynamics or interspecific dynamic, interspecific interaction. So, in co-evolutionary dynamic means it is a process in which some morphological changes are occurred, right? Due to their basic needs. So, the plant system or either plant leaf or any other part of plant may be modified into other living organism, right? So, that is called co-evolutionary dynamics. Actually, it plays an important role in evolution, the process of evolution, right? So some changes which will occur both in genetic and morphological characters. So that is called co-evolutionary dynamics. Now these changes are taking place in every living organism when they are adapted to the environmental condition. So that is called co-evolutionary dynamics. Okay, this co-evolutionary dynamics is broadly divided into the following types. The first type is mimicry, and the second type is myrmecophily, and third one is co-evolution. So first of all, let me take mimicry. Mimicry is nothing but there is an imitation, right? As any other living organism. An organism which imitates or an organism modifies morphological character according to the environmental condition. So that is called mimicry, right? And the second category is myrmecophily. Myrmecophily. So this myrmecophily it's nothing but some ant which it takes all the responsibility on living another living organism. So that is called myrmecophily. Simply I can say some ant may act as a bodyguard for some plants like a mango. Particularly I can say in mango, right? Lychee, acacia, etc. So in which the ants may act as a bodyguard. If you take a mango tree in which you can say there are several ants which are red in color, why are they present? Why are they growing on the branches on the tree of mango, lychee and acacia? Because in order to provide protection. So hence these red ants may act as a bodyguard, right? So even though they are taking their food, shelter, everything from the mango tree, in turn the mango tree or lychee, the acacia melanosus, they may provide all the necessary things which are obtained or consumed by ants. So that's why these ants are considered to be as bodyguards of mango. So this is a right example for myrmecophily. So myrmecophily is nothing but all the pollinating agents, all the simply the red ants which takes a responsibility in protection of mango tree and lychee and acacia. So this is an example of myrmecophily. So here, dear student, you can expect which of the following is known as bodyguard, right? Ants. So the ants may act as a bodyguard. This is a statement which is related to gas or categories of co-evolution dynamics. That is, if it is as given, right? Myrmecophily, right? And third one is co-evolution. So co-evolution, as I said, some changes may occur in both in genetic and morphological characters, right? When they adapt to a particular environmental condition, right? So that is called a. So all this character may be continued from one generation to another generation. When these character are transmitted from one generation to another generation, some changes are also carried out. Now, these changes may be inherited from one generation to another generation when they continue, right? So that is called the co-evolution. The characters are expressed in a particular generation. It is going to be inherited from one generation to another generation, right? So that is called the co-evolution. So what are the examples for each one? First of all, let me take mimicry. So mimicry, for that I'm going to give you an example, right? As I said, mimicry, one organism may be seen to be another living organism. That is called mimicry. For that, ovaries, an example, I'm going to give you ovaries. So actually, it is to act as in this plant. The stem or leaf is simply the plant which modifies like another living organism in order to protect by itself, right? By the affecting agent. So that is called as a mimicry. So mimicry is nothing but the plant which you modify its structure according to the environmental condition. That is called mimicry. For that, I'm going to give some example, right? These ovaries, the plant, actually it looks like insects, right? So in order to attract some insects, actually it looks like female insects, right? As I said, the one organism which modifies according to the environmental condition in order to fulfill their basic needs, like water, food, shelter, pollinating agent, etc. So here in this case, in ovaries is a right example of mimicry. Ovaries is a right example of mimicry in that the flower is modified into a female. The flower is modified into a female flower, a female insects. So these female insects, like a flower, may attract a number of male insects in order to pollination, right? So this is called a mimicry. Mimicry is nothing but an organism modify its morphological character according to the environmental conditions, because the plants are grown in forest itself, right? So these in the plant which you modify its flower like a female insects, and this is a female insect which will attract some male insects for pollination process, right? So that is a right example of a mimicry. Dear students, did you understand? It is very important area. You can expect this content in your examination. Which of the following is an example of mimicry? Dear students, did you understand? Could you tell me which plant modifies a flower like a female insects?
Ovaries.
Ovaries. Ovaries is a plant in which the flower is modified into like a female insects. Understand? So that is an example for a mimicry. One more example I am going to give you. Psyllium plant. Psyllium frondosa. Right, I'm going to give you. It's like a stick insects or sticky insects. or some walking stick. So this is a plant in which leaf insects, the Psyllium frondosa, Psyllium frondosa, it modifies its leaf like a insects, right? So leaf insects. Which of the following is known as the leaf insects or the walk stick, right? Leaf insects, because just see the plant, the leaf is modified into like a insects. The leaf is modified into like a insects. That is very important. Which of the following is an example of leaf insects? Dear student, do you understand? Could you give an example for leaf insects? Just see the plant in which the leaf is modified into like a insects. My dear students, could you give an example for leaf insects?
Psyllium frondosum.
Psyllium
Psyllium frondosa, right? Psyllium frondosa, that is the botanical name of leaf insects plant. So definitely the question is going to be asked in ecology, right? Which of the following is an example of leaf insects? That is a question. If it is asked, you got right, Psyllium frondosa. Okay, one more category I am going to give you, that is very interesting one. That is a stick insects. So this is one of the ecological adaptation. According to the ecological adaptation, the plant which modifies its characters, right? Like a stick insects. It is also known as a stick insects. That is a Carassius morus. That is a plant. Carassius. Morus. This plant which modifies like a stick, right? Like a stick insects. It is also known as a stick insects. So when you see the plant, you can see this is a stick insects, Indian stick. Which of the following is known as the Indian stick? Carassius morus. Students, would you like to give an example for stick insects? Can you tell me which of the following plant is known as stick insects?
Carassium
morosus.
Which of the following is known as a stick insect? Carassius morosus. Carassius morosus. The binomial is very important to pronounce, right? So repeatedly try to pronounce, right? So there are two examples which are very important for mimicry, right? Okay, next we pass on to myrmecopilli. As I said, the bodyguards of mango. If you go to mango tree, you can say not only fruit on the tree, you can see some red insects, red ant, right? Some black insects also. But the red ant may act as a bodyguard. That is a myrmecopilli. That is a special character of a myrmecopilli. So ant may act as a bodyguard. Where? and mango. Because these red ants may take their food shelter on the tree, and not only that, in turn, this ant may provide protection from the affecting agent, right? In order to protect mango tree, the ants are growing. So this is called a myrmecophily, right? I'm going to give you an example for this. You can understand easily. Right? This is a myrmecophily. Red ants. Their ants are also growing on the mango tree, right? First of all, in order to protect a mango tree, the red ants are growing naturally. This is a natural protectant of mango tree, right? That is a right example of myrmecophily. Myrmecophily, right? That is very interesting. Okay, next we pass on to another category. I'm talking about the co-evolutionary dynamics. The third category is co-evolution. As I said, co-evolution, that continuous modification for generation after generation, and as a result, the genetical changes and the morphological changes that you see in some plants, when the plant are growing continuously for several generations in a particular environment, their genetical characters and the morphological characters ultimately change, right? So sometimes it seems to be like a corolla, and sometimes it seems to be like a peak of birds. So for that, I'd like to give some example for this co-evolutionary. So the flower may looks like a beak of some birds, right? This is the right example for this. Some example. The corolla length and the proboscis length, but some of the butterfly, you can say. So this is a right example for co-evolutionary, right? Because when the birds are feeding their food to like a child bird, a small bird, right? So simply it takes their food from the small flower of some plant, right? So the butterflies and moths, I think they're binomial. Habenaria and the moth, they are the right example of. This is a content to be focused in examination point of view. Habenaria and the moth. Yes, student, please understand it is very. So this is a right example of co-evolution, right? Which of the following is a right example of co-evolution? If it is as regard right, Habenaria and the moth, they are the suitable example for evolution, evolutionary dynamics. Sometimes the beak of birds it modifies its shape according to the size of the flower and size of the flower and shape of the flower. So that is also one of the changes, morphological changes which will occur in an organism when it grows continuously in a particular environment, right? So that is a right example for a co-evolution. I'm talking about the big shape and the flower shape and size. Some examples are given, right? So here you got to take just the hornbills and birds. And the flower size, the flower shape and size may be characterized in evolutionary dynamics. That is a right example I can say. In Apocynaceae family, in Apocynaceae family or Calotropis family, Calotropis gigantea, it is called in Tamil Irkuchik, right? Calotropis. In Apocynaceae family, you can see the size of Pollinia, right? And the leg size of some insects. They can modify their leg size and their beak size according to the size of the flower. So that is also one of the changes, morphological changes that you see in co-evolution when the organism grows in a particular environment for several generations. So this is simply something about co-evolution. I'm talking about evolutionary dynamics or interspecific interaction, right? So thank you for joining, my dear students. Just I'm going to review once again for you. Almost the time is over. First, we discussed competition. Competition is nothing but it is an interaction that occurs in between same living organism or a different living organism, right? Same species or a different species for their basic requirement like water, nutrients, food, shelter, everything. So that is called a competition. Or competition is broadly divided into two. They are intraspecific interaction and intraspecific. That means the competition occurs within the species of same category. That is a intraspecific competition. Whereas the intraspecific competition occurs in between two different species for their basic needs, for their basic requirements for surveying in this world, right? So that is a intraspecific competition. Next, we discussed about amensalism. Amensalism is nothing but there are two. It is a kind of interaction in which one is totally incubated or harmed and the other is not benefited, not harmed, right? So if two living organisms are involved in interaction, one is totally incubated, I mean totally destroyed, and another living organism which is not benefited, which is not harmed, right? Neither benefited nor harmed. That is called amensalism. For that, I have given an example. Penicillium notatum that produces penicillin. The penicillin which incubates the growth of Staphylococcus member, right? That also incubates the entire activity of some bacteria. That is example. Here, this bacteria is totally incubated. I mean, it is totally destroyed. And whereas this fungus is not benefited and not harmed, right? So that is a right example of amensalism. Next, we discussed one more Trichoderma and the co-evolution, and it is broadly divided into three. They are the mimicry and the mimicry co-evolution. For mimicry, I have given three examples. The one is the operis plant, the plant which modifies its flower, like female insects. And this female flower seems to be like a female insect that will attract for pollination purposes, right? It is attracted only male insects. Next, we discussed Psyllium frondosa. I think it's leaf insects because it modifies leaf like an insect, right? That is the right example of Psyllium frondosa. The next thing that we discussed, that is Carassius morosus. Stick insects or Indian stick insects, that is also very interesting topic, right? Carassius morosus. Carassius morosus. It seems to be like insects, right? Sticky insects. This is also one of the ecological adaptation. And next we discussed myrmecophilia, right? And bodyguards in mango and lich acacia plant. So thank you for joining, my dear student. Thank you once again for it. And this is the time for taking home assignment. Please take it.